Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael from Hustle Sheets, and today I want to show you guys how to build this monthly report dashboard inside of Google Sheets in 10 simple steps. Now, the purpose of this entire video is to show you guys how to create a system where you can enter in all of your sales data, your cost data, and then basically create a monthly report that looks something like this, right? And we're only using 4 or 5 formulas, so this is really simple, and the whole purpose is to show you how to structure everything so that you can leverage just a few skills and a few simple formulas to create really dynamic reports and really level up your Google Sheets skills. Okay, so what this report does is it basically summarizes all of your sales data on the monthly level and shows you the latest 12 months. Now, this report is a bit more static. It's a little bit less dynamic than the previous dashboards that I've shown you, but I still think this is a really great report to learn how to build, right? And like I said, it's really simple. There are some dynamic parts of this dashboard. For example, you can select the latest month that you want to show. So it goes in order from the earliest month to the latest month down here. And I can select that I want to show, like a different month, right? And show the previous 12 months on those from that month forward or backwards. And the reason for that is because currently I'm in July of 2022, and obviously all of the data isn't completely filled in yet, so it's going to kind of skew some of the numbers if you're thinking of this as a 12-month report. So you can select the latest full month, and then you can have more accurate numbers. Okay, so first let me go over the features of this report or dashboard, then I'll show you guys how to enter in the data, and I'll show you how to put it all together to kind of build this out. Okay, and then I have all of the steps listed here so you guys can easily follow along, and we'll basically check them as we kind of go through. Now, this template is going to be available for download for purchasing, but if you guys don't want to do that, you guys can easily just follow along and you guys can build the exact same one, like pretty simple, I think, but it'll obviously help you guys to kind of just have all the formulas there, right? Okay, so first let me go over the features of this. As you can see here, we have our important metrics in the top in these little scorecard sections here. So we have our bookings, which are basically jobs, and we have our total revenue, our revenue per booking, our total cost, total profit, profit per booking, and our profit margin. And down here, we also have an average per month. So you can see here that we get an average of 66 bookings per month, 7,500 in revenue. The average revenue per booking is this much, your average total cost per month. So I think that's pretty cool. And then here I've added a few visual elements to help make the dashboard easier to kind of just look at a glance and get key insights, right? So this Sparkline up here is kind of like a trend, and it shows you in bar graphs just your bookings over the last 12 months, and then the blue bar is going to be the highest number. So you'll see here that it's trending, and then you had your highest month towards the end of the 12 months, right? And that basically matches up with March 2022 here. As you can see, this is the longest bar, and this heat map also shows the darkest color for the highest number. So these are the things that kind of draw your eyes into the more important parts of it, and you can kind of just easily spot the trends, and then you can kind of dive in a little bit deeper, right? Okay, so for this example, what I'm using is a lash tech business. So you see here, and for some of you guys that don't know, lashing is basically a beauty service that girls kind of use to glue, like literally the little eyelash extensions onto their eyelashes. But it doesn't really matter. You can use this format and structure for any business, right? The only thing is that we're basically recording every single job on a single row here, and that's how most businesses work, right? So we have the important elements like a date, the client name, set type, lash style. These basically just describe the job. So like whatever style of job, whatever category of job, you're going to add them here, the total amount paid, and then the notes. And then here I have a section where you can enter in your variable costs. So these might be like material, supplies, whatever you get, you can just enter them on every time you buy something, you just put in the date, you put in what it's called, you put in the total cost, the quantity, and any notes you have. And then here I also have a monthly cost. This is more for like your overhead. So like your rent, any software that you use, things that are more fixed, right? Your fixed costs that you're going to enter in on a monthly basis. And the reason for the differences in this is because this is a little bit easier to enter in. You don't need to repeat your fields, right? Whereas this, you're going to have to repeat every time you do it. But then I'll show you guys how to combine all of this onto like a monthly table. And then that's where we're going to use as our source to build this dashboard. If you look at these steps here, these are the 10 steps. It's really easy. And I kind of show you the sections. So basically there are kind of 3 sections to every spreadsheet where you enter, where you have data and then you kind of visualize it, right? There is the data entry portion like this, where you're basically entering the data. And then there is the dashboard or the visualization, which is basically this report I'm going to show you guys how to build. And then on the back end, there are some calculations, right? Whether it's a helper tab or a helper table, there's something that we're doing on the back where we're creating these calculations. And I want to kind of show you guys a system of how to create spreadsheets where we kind of separate the three, so that instead of just putting all the formulas on one spot in one tab, it's a bit more like a database and a bit more structured. So the first step that we're going to go with is going to be the data entry system. This is where we're going to create, where we're going to enter in our data, such as our bookings, our costs, our monthly costs, right? So I'm going to start by creating a new tab. I'm going to call it bookings new, because I already have a old bookings tab. This way I can show you step by step. Now all we're going to do here is basically, this is where we enter in all of our jobs, right? So the most important thing, obviously you need to have a date here, and then the client name might be helpful. This is, but you can track anything you want with that you care about knowing about each job, right? Anything that is at a single job level. And then here I'll put set type, which is basically just describing the type of lashing set that it is, but you can put like job category, anything that you want, right? And then we'll put lash style. We're gonna put total paid, which is the total cost, and then I might put some notes, right? So we're gonna put this like this, and then I'm gonna obviously add drop downs. That's super important, but I'm gonna do that after I create the rest of the tabs. So here I have, the next thing I want to put in is I'm going to put in my variable costs. Variable costs new. Now this is where I'm going to put in any costs that I get on a daily level or whatever. So the first thing is you always want to have a date, product name, total cost, quantity, and then notes. Now you always want to separate these out, you know, your bookings, your costs on a separate tabs, okay? Think about each tab as a separate like data tracking element of your guys' business, okay? I see people put them on the same tabs, just put it on a separate tab, it's a lot easier. Now a new one is going to be our monthly costs here. Now this one is going to be a little bit different because we're going to enter it into, I guess, what is called a pivot table format. And the reason that we do this is because it just makes it a little bit easier to input the data that we know we're going to get on a monthly level, okay? So what we're going to do is down on this first column here, we'll put in the cost, and then in the rows here, we'll put in the months, okay? So I'm going to call this like overhead name, or like cost, or monthly cost name, okay? So down here, I'll put in like my costs, such as like rent, scheduling, app, whatever, right? And then across here, I'm going to put in the months. So for now, I'm going to put in just the first date of each month. So for the month of January 2022, I'm going to put January 1st, 2022, like that, right? And then the next month is going to be February. Just put in 2, and then you can just highlight it and then drag it, and it'll automatically do it all the way across. So now I have all of these months here. Now I'm going to use the first of the month, and I'll kind of explain to you guys why. Sometimes it's good to use the end of the month, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to use the first of the month. And you see here it says the first, but you can easily change the format by highlighting it. Go to format, number, and then there should be like just like whatever format you want to show it in. So even though it says January 2022, it's still, the actual value is actually January 1st, right? So I can bold this and then go from there. Okay, so now let's go back to our steps. Now that's our data entry system. You're basically just deciding what you want to track for each thing, right? For the bookings, for the costs, the columns, basically you're deciding on that. So that part's done. Now the next part is going to be the drop downs. Now drop downs are super important. So let's create a tab. We'll just call this drop downs new. Now the drop downs are basically when you're entering in your data, you want them to be able to select from a drop down menu. This way they can't mistype things, okay? Now the first thing you want to do a drop down for are probably your dates. So you're going to highlight this all the way down to the very bottom, and then let me just do it this way. And then you're going to highlight it, and then you're going to go to data validation, and then the criteria, just going to make this a date, is valid date. Now what this does is when you double click into it, it's going to show you a date, right? I want to change the format to like kind of the American date style, but you can do whatever you want. Go to number, you can go to custom date format and choose one, but here we have date here. Okay, now I'm going to skip client name because you're just going to type in like random client names at first, right? But I'm going to show you guys how to also turn this into a dynamic dropdown. Now the next thing we want is we want set types, right? So in lashing, there's a full set or a fill set, which is basically full or half, right? So you're going to highlight this down, right click it. Instead of highlighting all the way down, you can just go to change the range. So right now it's doing from C2 to here to 10, but you can just delete the last row. So now it's from C2 all the way down to C. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here, select a data range. I'm going to go to that Dropdowns tab. And then here on the second row, I'm going to highlight this down to like 20. Okay, just make it to like 20 unless you have more than 20 options, right? You can go to the very bottom too if you really want to. Doesn't really matter. Hit save. Now here on the title of this, I'm going to call this, because we're doing the set type, right? Let's call this set type, and then the options are going to be full or fill. I'll put this in caps. I like to put everything in lowercase, but these two just look so similar. I think it's easier to do it this way. So now what's going to happen is when you go to your set, you're going to see full or fill. Whenever you add in anything new, like new set type here, it's going to show up here. New set type is going to show up here, right? And this way they can just select it and then they won't misspell it, things like that. Okay, and also it's going to show in the same order as it shows up here. So if you want it to, if let's say you have like set type ABC, you can just highlight it, view more actions, sort range, and then just sort it from A to Z, turn it in order, and then these will show up in that order. Okay, but obviously we just want fill and full here. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is do the same thing for lash style. You can just highlight, just do the same thing, data validation, list from a range, go here, we'll create the next column here, and then just delete this, and then this will be, what's it called? Lash style. So lash style is going to be, there's a bunch of different lash styles. Let's see, what are they called again? Let's go volume, in my Dropdowns tab, it's going to be called, volume, light volume, mega volume. These are just different ways of describing what you're doing for your job. And you'll see here, for some reason, the data validation didn't go all the way down. You can just highlight it, view more action, data validation, and just change this range to not to D2 to D6, but D2 all the way down. Hit OK and hit save, and now it's going across. And here we're just putting our numbers, right? This is how much they've been paying. But you want to change the formatting to $signs or whatever currency it is. So just press the E and then change it to this. And then for notes, we're going to make this a little bit longer. And now we have this part set up. Now I'm going to come back. Okay, you know what? I'll do this part now. So let's say you have a client, right? You have clients who are getting their lashes done, whatever, on this day, LeBron James. And let's say Michael Jordan comes back. Or you know what? I'll use Harry Potter characters. So Harry Potter came in, then Hermione Granger came in, and you're typing these names, right? Now let's say, and then we have Ron Weasley. Now let's say Harry Potter comes back, right? And you don't want to have to retype it. Yeah, this thing shows up, but it's not as cool, and there's a possibility that you might you might misspell it, right? Like that. Right, so how do we create a drop-down menu where we basically can type in new names where they're new customers, but if it's an old customer, we're going to have them show up on a drop-down list. Okay, so let me show you how. What we want here is we want to, okay, so I'm going to do Harry Potter came in twice, Hermione Granger came in again, right? So this is how we do it. Go to your drop-downs. I'm going to call this unique customer list. Okay, and then let me wrap this format so that it wraps. Okay, so you're going to use the unique formula. It's really the unique formula. Type in unique, parentheses, go back to your client list and highlight this all the way down, or just delete down here. So now what it's going to do is it's going to show you just a unique list of all of your customers, right? So let's say on the next day, let's say Draco Malfoy comes in here. Now that name is going to show up here, right? So all we're going to do now is change this drop down option. So we're going to make this a drop down option, data validation. I'm going to make it go all the way down. Okay. Select the range, go to our drop downs, and we're going to highlight this entire list all the way down. Okay. And hit OK. And now we're going to hit save. And now you'll see here, my drop down options are my current customers, right? And let's say I type in someone new, like Voldemort or something. Now Voldemort is going to be an option for my drop downs, right? But anyone new, I'm just going to type in regularly. But if Harry Potter came in again, I can just select it from my drop downs. So that's a really cool dynamic way of doing that. Just make sure you don't ever edit this. What I like to do is highlight my formula columns like in gray, and just don't edit it. But one other thing we want to add to this is we want to add a sort formula so that this shows up in alphabetical order. So just go before the unique up here, and then just type in sort, parentheses at the beginning, parentheses at the end. Now it sorts it in order. So that's a really cool way of just kind of having a drop down that keeps on adding values to it, right, based on what you type here. Okay, so now that part is set. Now we want to do the same thing for our variable costs. Now it's the same exact thing. Date is going to have data validation here. Change it to a date. We want to change the format to a, whatever date your country uses. Now we're going to do the exact same thing for product names, because you might enter in like product name. Let's say you need Q-tips for some reason, right? And then you need to add it again. You don't have to keep on typing it or spell it a different way. Okay, so it's the same exact thing. Let's say Q-tips. I don't know what else they use, like towels. Towels. And then let's say we want a I don't know, lash trace or something. Okay. Same thing. Go to drop downs, unique product costs. We're going to do a sort unique of all of our costs down to the very bottom. I'll make this gray so I know it's a formula. Do not edit it. Variable costs here, highlight all the way down. Data validation, I am going to use this column. Done. Okay, and then now we have our total costs here. Change it to $1. Here it's just a number, like quantity. Let's put in some sample data. Right. And then our notes, blah, blah, blah. Cool. So this part is done. Now for the monthly part, since these costs aren't going to be as many, I'm not going to go through how to make a drop down. You're basically just going to put, let's say your rent's like $800 a month. Basically it's going to keep putting it in like this, right, for every month. Maybe it changes, whatever, but this is how it works. I'm pressing Command R here or Control R on a PC to basically just highlight all the way down. Maybe you want to change the formatting of it to a $sign. Okay. Now you also always want to add a total usually, and almost everyone adds their totals at the bottom. I don't like doing this, like a sum like this, because what it does is it makes it so that whenever you want to add in a new cost, you need to like kind of edit things, right? So I always prefer that you guys add in your totals at the very top. So totals, and then this way, sum the entire thing, right? You see here, it's still keeping the same format. So just click on this row here and change it to a $. Format. And then just basically, you can just highlight this all the way over. So this way you can continually add to the very bottom, and it's always going to include it, right? It's always going to change. So I always suggest you put your totals at the top, so this way your spreadsheets scale a bit better, okay? So cool. So now we have all of our drop-down options. This part is done. Now let's put in some fake data so we can actually build some dashboards with some data in it. So for you, you'd probably go in and just kind of fill some stuff in. Just have a few months of data would be nice. For me, I am just going to take the data that I already have here, and I'm going to copy it in. So I'm going to highlight all of this, select all the way down. So Command, Shift, and the arrows are how you navigate this. You basically just clicked one cell here, and then I'm pressing Command, Shift, arrow key over. It takes you to the very end, and then I hold it and I press Command, Shift down, and now I can just copy it. On a PC, whenever I say Command, it actually is just Control here. So I'm going to copy all of this data here. I'm going to go to my bookings. Now I'm not just gonna paste in, if I just were to paste it in regularly, this is so weird. I'm gonna paste it in paste special and paste the values only. So this way it keeps my current format, right? Because if you just paste it, it might take over some. I happen to have the same drop downs, but otherwise it's going to like paste over your drop downs, things like that. So I'm gonna paste the values only. Now I have all this data here. I wanna be able to scroll down obviously. So I'm going to click on the first, scroll down and have my first header row just kind of stay fixed so I can always see it. So just highlight just click on the row, go to view, go to freeze, go to up to row 1. So now I can do it this way, right? And you'll see here, it's gonna show red where I didn't put in the lash style. So hybrid is obviously an option. I'll go to my drop downs. I'm going to enter in hybrid, and you'll see here now the red goes away. So that's pretty cool. Okay, and then for the variable costs, I'm also just going to copy in the same thing. Okay, copy this. Variable costs. I'm just going to go here. Command Shift V is how you paste in values. And then I'm going to do it for my monthly costs as well. Copy this over. Where are my monthly costs? Whoops. Okay, so just like this. Okay, cool. And then for this, you can just freeze the column as well. Column A. So this way it looks like this. And then we're going to add some formatting at the very end to make this a lot easier. Okay, cool. So now I've added in some of the data. That part is done. Now we're going to create this blended table, which is basically calculations. So we basically have all of our data here right now, but how do we summarize it by month? How do we summarize it by month and create a dashboard that looks, a report that looks like this, right? So what we want to do is we want to create a monthly table that basically calculates, that sums everything up by month, right? Now, I normally, in my other videos here, I use the query formula that makes it a bit more dynamic, but for simplicity's sake, I'm going to show you guys how to do this just using some ifs, and it's a bit more simple and easy to understand, okay? So I'm going to create a tab here. I'm going to call it, you can call it calculation. I'll call it monthly calculations. It's always good to name your tabs as kind of at what level calculations, at what level the data is at, right? So here we're going to have the data on the monthly level. So I am going to create a column called month here, okay? Now, I'm going to be using the sum ifs formula, and before I get too into it, you're basically going to sum it by certain columns, right? So if I go to monthly cost new here, I put the first of the month here, okay? So you're going to put the first of the month of the first month that you want to start tracking data. So I'm going to do 2021 here, okay? And then I'm going to, okay. So what this does is it shows you January 1st, 2021, January 2nd, and I'm basically just going to create a huge column of every month possible for the next however many years, okay? So down here, 2032, that's a very long time, but whatever, doesn't really matter. Okay, so this is the month. I'm using the first of each month. You can basically format it to show it just as the month. But you know what? Let me just show the first of the month, and let me go back here and make it show the first of the month. This might help make things a bit easier to understand. Okay, so now this is really simple. Now the whole purpose of this tab here is to just summarize all of this data by the month, right? So I want to summarize all of March 2021 and things like that, okay? So the way that I am going to do that is month, week level. So the way that I'm going to do that is okay, so I want to sum up all of the total paid, right? So this is basically revenue. It's really good to name all your metrics the same across all sections of your spreadsheet so there's no confusion. So naming convention is actually quite important. So because of that, I'm going to change this number, what this means to revenue, okay? So under monthly calculations, I am going to put in revenue here. Now, I basically want to sum, if I go to my bookings here, I'm going to open this in a new window. Okay, so if I go to my bookings here, this is my bookings tab. I basically want to sum up all of my revenue by this month, right? But how do I do that? Now you do this by adding in helper columns usually, okay? And what you're going to do is, let's see here. So what you're going to do is you're going to add in a helper column to your bookings called month, right? And then I'm going to type in equals date. I'm going to use the date formula. Then I'm going to say, now you basically just put in the year, the month, and the day, okay? So I'm going to put in the year of this, of A2 of this date, put in the comma, then I'm going to put in the month of this, right? Now, instead of putting the date of this, I'm just going to put in a 1 because I've been using the first of the month for everything, okay? And then you can just autofill this down, right? And by this, I mean you basically just drag, let me zoom out a bit. You basically just drag this formula all the way down to the very bottom. And there's obviously going to be more rows at the bottom, right? So I'm going to drag this all the way down. Now, what you'll see is anytime something's in March, it's going to show it as the first of that month, right? And it's April, the first of that month. And I can change this format to make it show this, so that makes a bit more sense. But this is actually what the value is, okay? Now, if I look down at the very bottom here, it's going to pull the month of blank here, which is nothing, right? So it's going to have this crazy weird year because the date of nothing is apparently December 1st, year 3799. So I'm just going to change this, add this something to this formula that says if A2 equals nothing, and nothing or blank is just 2 quotation marks, then if that's true, then I'm going to leave that blank. And that's so I just put in 2 commas here. And then if it's false, if there's something in here, then I'm going to run this formula. Okay, so I'm going to drag that formula all the way down, just like this. And now there's nothing here. Okay, now there's one problem with using helper formulas that I need to warn you about, is sometimes what you do is you basically delete like an entire row, right? Let's say you want to delete an entire row. We want to clear the contents, you delete it, and now the formula is gone here. So now it's not going to calculate that month. So you want to make sure that you always check this column to have a formula in it, okay? Or another problem that can come up is, let's say you add more rows. This formula only goes down to like this row here, but it's either you have to make sure you drag it all the way down. So there's a few ways of fixing this. And what you can do is you can add a new tab. I'll call it bookings helper. Okay. And all we're going to do is we are going to project using just the equal formula. And then you're going to just highlight everything up until notes all the way down. So A1 to F, right? And just hit enter here and it's not going to show up. But just put this in an array formula. Whoops. Like this. And what it does here is this basically just projects on whatever's on that tab, right? So I'm going to freeze this up to this row, and then I'm going to call this helper month. And then you're just going to apply the same formula that you used here. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is just using an array formula. Now I'm going to go over some more advanced ways of fixing this issue in kind of my premium course, I guess, because there are ways that you don't even need to do any of this, but this is just the most simple way of doing it. Okay, the way that I showed you here is the most simple way, but there are some possibilities of errors. Here is a pretty good way. You can build, tons of spreadsheets just like this. Build this all the way down, right? And just make sure that you always check this tab to make sure that this formula is always going down forever. I would just add in like 10,000 rows, something crazy, and just add this all the way down. Now, whenever you, Now, whenever you add in any data here, it's going to show onto your bookings helper tab, right? So I'm going to change this color to red. And then we're basically using this. It's basically the same thing except that you can't delete the formula. Okay, so to keep it safer, I'm going to do it this way. So I'm going to use this helper tab. Okay. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do now is we want to summarize all of this data by month, right? So now I have a helper tab. On this monthly calculations, I am basically going to use this sum if formula. Now, sum if formula is one of the best formulas that you can use. Make sure that you kind of practice this, and once you learn it really well, you can really increase your spreadsheet skills. Okay, so I'm going to do sum ifs. My sum range, I'm going to go to my helper. Oops, and then I want to sum up my revenue, right? So don't select a header, just select from E2 down, and then you don't have to highlight all the way down, just delete this. And then the criteria range that I want is this helper month. So I'm going to sum everything up in this column if this helper month is equal to here on my monthly calculations, okay? And then I'm just going to hit enter. Now, I'm going to drag this formula all the way down, but you see if I start dragging this down, my E4 changes, right? And I basically want it to always just sum up everything in this column. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you lock in the E2 range. So it's always going to be E2 and it's always going to be G2. This A2 is not going to be locked in because you're going to change it. It's going to change depending on which month it is, okay? So make sure that you always lock in the criteria ranges, okay, at the row level. Okay, so now I'm going to drag this formula all the way down. And you'll see here, and then I can change it to $1. And you'll see here what it does is it sums up everything in the revenue if, let me change this to gray so I know it's a formula. If it's in this month, it's basically just going to summarize everything on a monthly level, okay? Let me freeze this. So you kind of basically get the idea. Now I'm going to do the same thing with my variable costs, right? I want to sum up all of my variable costs if it's in the same month. Now the same thing, I can just do a helper column or I can do a helper tab, right? So I guess I'll just do a helper variable costs helper. Okay. Now, like I said, this isn't my favorite way of doing it anymore, but if you're kind of just starting things out, this is a great way of doing it. I'm going to go over some more advanced things in my course where you don't need any of this stuff, but for now, this is how we're going to do it. So I'm going to do equals whatever is in here in an array formula all the way down, and I'm going to call this helper month. And I can basically just go to my old formula here, and I can just copy it and then just enter it in here, A2, enter this all the way down, okay, because it happens to reference the same one, which is the first column. Number, I can make this a month if I want to, don't have to. Okay, I'll make this gray. Cool. So now we have that. I am going to go to my monthly calculations. I'll call this variable costs. And then I'm going to sum ifs my variable cost helper. Oops, I'm going to sum the cost column, which is actually in column C, all the way down if the helper month equals this, right? Same thing, make sure you lock in all of your criteria, your sum and your criteria ranges, okay? Because you can have multiple criterias. Cool. Okay, so now that we have that, now the next thing we want to do is we want to add in our fixed costs, right? Our fixed costs. Now the fixed cost is a little bit different because you'll see here, if you go into my monthly costs, or you know what, I'm going to call it monthly costs because I called it monthly costs here. This is what I mean. You want to keep the naming convention the same, otherwise it can get a little bit confusing. So my monthly costs is kind of the same thing, but it's just like in a horizontal format, right? But basically, I want to sum up this row instead of this column now. If this row matches my monthly calculations, this column. So it's a little bit weird, but we're still going to use the same formula. So just type in equals sum ifs, go to your monthly costs. Now I'm going to sum here if this month, which is this is basically my monthly helper, you can think of it that way. if I go to my booking, oh, not my bookings, my calculations, if it equals this, right? Now the trick here is basically to know which one to lock in as I drag this formula down, right? Because as I drag it down, it's going to change it. It's going to like basically go down on the rows. Here, let me pull up my monthly costs a little bit closer. So what I want to do is I always want to keep everything in row 1, and then as the summing range, and then as my criteria range, everything in row 2, right? So now instead of locking in, I basically want to lock in both. Okay, when you're doing horizontally, just lock it in both ways. Lock in the column and the row, just to keep it easier. So I'm going to do this, do this, do this. And then once I drag it all the way down, you'll see here, now my costs completely add up correctly, okay? So that's just something different when you're summing horizontally. And then now I have my, basically all the metrics I need, but now I can add in my total costs here. And my total costs are basically just this plus this, right? And then you can sum this all the way down. Now you have your total cost column. Profit is basically just revenue minus variable costs, and then minus monthly costs, or I can just subtract my total costs. This part most people should know how to do. And then my profit percentage is going to be, this formula is basically for profit margin, profit margin. It's basically your percent of profit. So it's going to be, it's going to be your total revenue. Oh wait, I forgot to do one thing. I forgot to do my bookings. Okay, so for my bookings, I am going to sum up, I'm going to count each row basically, okay? So I should use my bookings helper. Okay, so monthly calculations. Now instead of doing a sum if, I'm just going to do a count if. So count ifs is going to be, I'm going to count every row in my helper. So you can choose literally any one where you're going to have in some data, right? So maybe probably the date is probably the best one, but you're going to count all of this. Oh wait, no, sorry. You just use the helper. Okay, so you're going to count every single one here if it matches here. That's basically it. And then you're going to change this to a number. Here. And then just lock in the criteria range. And then there you go. So this count ifs is a bit simple. You can just use the count if formula, but I just use the plural ones. So this is going to be the bookings. Okay. Cool. I hope that made sense. Now for profit margin, it's basically going to be your revenue minus your costs divided by your revenue. Okay. So it's equals revenue minus total costs divided by your revenue, like this. And obviously if it's 0, it's going to be nothing, but let me drag this down and then change this to a percent. How do we get rid of this? Using the if error. So wrap this in an if error. So if there's an error, basically, if there's no error, do this formula. If there's no error, just leave it blank. And that's basically how we are doing it. Cool. There are some, you can use if formulas to get rid of all this stuff where there's nothing here. You basically just say if parentheses this one equals blank, then nothing, and then all the way down. So I always do that just because I like it to look a bit cleaner, and it can also kind of cause some issues sometimes. Oh, whoops, not to do an if error. I meant to do an if. But this is not exactly necessary sometimes, but I think it's good practice. So if this, whoops. So I'm basically just wrapping everything. Why do I keep doing if error? I meant to do if this, oh my God. I'm usually pretty good at not messing up like this, but okay. So all I'm saying in all of these formulas, I'm saying if there's nothing, if A2, okay, I'm saying if A2 equals blank, then do nothing. If it's not blank, then run the formula, okay? And all this does is it just looks here. If there's nothing here, then it's not gonna do anything. Okay, like I said, not necessary, but still good to use. Okay, so now you'll see what we accomplished here is we have it on a month level, or at least the first of each month. We have all of the important numbers that we want ready, right? Now this is basically this dashboard, the last 12 months. It's basically the same thing. The only difference is that now we want to kind of just, this is kind of like the messy back end, right? And we don't want to display it this way because it's important to only show people the important numbers, right? So this is why we built this kind of helper calculation tab thing, right? This one, I guess, would fall in line with this calculations here. So we've created this blended table. Now we're done with this step. Now the only key now is to basically create something that's a bit more visual and clean for someone to look at. So we have our monthly calculations here. You can kind of hide our helpers. Okay. Cool. Now for I'm going to create a new one called, I'll call this dashboard 12-month report. Now, what we want to do is we want to build our dashboard. So let me show you guys how to do that. So if you go to last 12 months here, this is what we're trying to build, okay? So I'm going to move this to the very end here. It's good to color coordinate your tabs. It can get a bit confusing sometimes. I'm basically trying to create this dashboard, and I'll start with kind of building out this column first, right? Because as you can probably tell, we're using the sum if formula for this report. So we need to sum it if, we need to sum up all of the numbers in our helper tab if it equals this month, right? So you can probably guess that what we're going to do is put in like a monthly range. So let's say we were to put in the first of each month. Let's say we were to put in 2022 here, right? And then the next one is going to be February 2nd. Let me just show you how this is going to look. So we do this, and then now we're going to sum it if. Now I'm going to, let's say this is going to be my bookings, okay? My bookings here. So as you can guess, we're going to do the sum ifs. I'm going to go to my monthly calculations, which is my helper. I want to sum all of these bookings here, whoops, from B, if the month equals this month here, okay? And let me zoom in. And like I said, always lock the rows of your sum and your criteria range, okay? So I'm going to pull this all the way down, and then let's just show, let's see, let me number this so I can see what 12 month is. I'm going to show you guys how to build this just for a static 12 months, but I think you guys can probably figure out if you guys want to do more than that or less than that, whatever. Okay, so this is 12 months of data here. So now I'm going to have my bookings, and let's say I want my revenue here. The cool thing about the sum if is once you build it once, it's really easy, okay? So let me, sorry to show you guys my messy desktop. I'm trying to show you guys kind of both tabs, okay? So let me create this here. And let me show you guys my monthly calculations. So now, so I've summed up my bookings here. As you can see here, I'm summing B. Now I just need to come to sum C for my revenue, right? So my revenue, I can just copy this same formula, and then revenue is in column C. So if you look here, my sum range is not going to be B, it's going to be C. Okay, so now this is my revenue, right? And I can just change this to a dollar amount. And the next thing I want to do is, let's say I want to do revenue per booking. This one is quite simple. It's literally just going to be my revenue divided by number of bookings, right? And I can drag this all the way down. Why is there no data for December 1st of 2020? Oh, it's not December yet. Okay, good. And you see here, this one is going to have errors if there's 0. So maybe I want to put in an if error, right? An if error statement like this. Change it back to $1. Next thing I want is my total costs. If you go to my monthly calculations, total cost is in column F in this case, right? So just take this old formula, paste it in here. Now you don't want to, if you just paste it directly in here, it's going to reference like different things, right? If you were to lock it, it would have been fine, but just double click into the cell and then highlight it and then copy it and then double click into this cell till you see the cursor and then paste it in. Okay, don't just copy and paste it directly, okay? Unless you have locked in the correct cells, but it's just simpler to do it this way. Now, instead of summing up C, what we're gonna do is we're gonna sum F, okay? So let's change the C to an F and drag this formula all the way down. So what I'm doing is I'm doing Command Shift down, I'm just doing Shift down arrow, Shift down until I hit 12, and then I press Command D or Control D on a PC, Command D, and it just drags all the formulas down. Okay, now the next thing we want is total profit. Now total profit, we can do this two separate ways. We can literally just take in our revenue minus here, revenue minus here, or since we already created the calculation, we can just sum if here. So this is up to you, but it doesn't really matter. As long as you did everything correctly, it's going to give you the same amount. Okay. So that's our total profit, and then we want profit per booking, which is going to be profit divided by bookings. Same thing. Let's just add in an if error here. Change it back here. Okay. And then we want the profit margin, and same thing with the profit margin, right? We can either do it by, you can sum this, and the only reason why we can sum it is because this, our helper tab is at a monthly level, and that's what we're showing here, right? But technically, probably the better thing to do is do the calculation on the front end. So this is going to be, I think it was revenue minus, what was it? Revenue minus our total costs, which is here, divide that by our revenue, which is here, right? And then you can drag this down, and then we'll probably add in an if error like this, and then change it to percentage. And then what we can do is kind of wrap this out so that it shows like this. Okay, so now you'll see we basically have some of our dashboard here. It looks a little bit similar. What we want to do now is add in the sum of these numbers, right? Now this is really easy for totals. Sum basically all the way across here, those 12 rows, and we're just going to copy this across. And you'll see here, just double check that it's the right thing. Okay, revenue per booking. Sorry, you don't sum this. You don't sum this. And this is profit margin. What you do on the totals for these kind of calculated fields, you're going to need to just create a calculation again. Okay, so this total profit divided by number of bookings, and then profit margin, same calculation. You're going to do what is it? Total revenue minus total costs divided by revenue here, profit margin. So this way you get an exact, right? And then we can basically just change this to make this a little bit, too big. Let's make it 20. And then let's also wrap this so that it shows everything. Oh, let's make it a bit smaller. Why not? Even smaller, just for now. I'll make it bigger later. Okay, so now we have this part here, okay? We create the tables. Oh, I think I skipped checking off a step. This is the table, I guess, is done because I'm working on the scorecards now. Okay, so this is the scorecards here, and then down here, let's just copy, actually here, you know what I'll do. Now we're gonna create the averages per month, okay? So this is gonna be the totals, and then this is gonna be the average per month. Now for average per month, we basically just use the average formula, and it basically kind of guesses it ready for you, but we don't want this top row, right? We just want the average from here, from these 12 months alone. So average revenue, average booking. This one you can basically just fill all the way across because we're just going to do the averages, so you don't need to actually calculate it. And then you want to have the same format, so just highlight this and then put this down here. Okay, so this is pretty great now. We have our scorecards. Okay, so there is one thing I want to go over, right? So right now I put in a pretty static range of months, right? Which is not really what we want. Or did I put this step at the end? Okay, I put this at the end, so I'll go over this later. Sorry, guys. Okay, so the next thing we're doing is going to be the scorecards, which we just finished. Now we're going to work on the Sparkline charts. Now Sparklines are a really cool little in-cell formula where you can basically add in these really cool little features, right? To help visualization a little bit. So the first thing that we'll add is we're going to add one next to each metric. So I'm going to insert one column right here. And then what I'll do is I'm going to do a Sparkline. So I'm going to do this formula is called Sparkline. And then the data point is going to be here. And then you basically put in a comma, and there's a bunch of options. I have a couple of videos on Sparklines. I'll probably make another one and go more in depth on it, so you guys can check it out. But basically, there's certain syntax. So I'm going to use, actually it's going to be this example one here. So it's just going to be type in chart type, comma, the chart type I'm doing is a bar, and then I am going to do a max. So in between semicolons, you're going to put in the max here. So the max basically means for the bar chart, like what is the max value, right? So 67, but what's going to be the max? So the max is actually going to be the max of here. So the max formula gives you the highest number. So in this case, it's 87. So, and then I'm going to close it out with a bracket and a thing. So what this does, and also lock in your max ranges, okay? Like I said, if you were to download or purchase this template, it basically has these formulas in it, so it's a lot easier to follow along. But basically what this means is the max value of this entire bar chart is going to be whatever the max value is in this column. So if it changes, so if I were to type in like 100, it's going to take the max of this, right? If I type in like 1,000, it's going to make it look really small. Let me undo these changes. So that's what that basically means, okay? So I'm going to delete this, and then I am going to paste this here. Let me see if it works. Okay, cool. Nice. So we can just paste it in, and actually makes it a lot easier for each metric. So I'm going to insert one right here. I can just copy this. Don't paste values, paste like actuals, and then just press enter, and then you can see if it did it correctly or not. So, oh, you can also add an if error to these ones. I would do it all the way across, but I'm not going to do it on this video. Oops, here, paste it here. Here is good. Cool. I'm a big hotkey guy. Maybe I'll make like a shortcut video on like my favorite hotkeys, but I basically don't even use the mouse. I just navigate with keyboards. It makes building spreadsheets a lot faster. Okay, cool. So now we have these scorecards. Let me zoom out a bit. What we want now is we want to add in, these are really cool. This Sparkline here kind of gives you like a little trend here. So this one is a little bit more complicated. Like I said, I think I might make an in-depth video on how to do stuff like this, like these Sparklines. So just look out for that. But I'm gonna basically put it here, okay? So Sparkline, now my Sparkline is going to be this entire section here. That's my data point. And then for chart type is going to be a column type. And then I am going to do, oh, that's basically it to keep it simple. Okay, so I'm not gonna go over in this video how to make like the high color green, but you can basically see it in this formula if you guys want to screenshot this. But basically there's a high color thing you can put in low color, things like that, okay? But for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna do it this way. It makes it a lot easier. So I'm just gonna copy this. You can just copy it, paste it here, just double check that. Oh, so I messed up. So you see here, I'm referencing this average, which I don't want to, so I only want to go to D19, okay? Whoops, that's only D10. I'm gonna do D19 here. I'm gonna paste this in here, paste this in here, just double check again. Paste this here, paste this here, here, and here. Great. So now I have my Sparkline section done. Let's check off that part here. And then now we're going to add a heat map. Heat maps are also another cool visual way to just easily make a few findings. So you're just going to highlight all the data, format, conditional formatting, go to color scale, move my face. And then I am basically just going to go lightest to darkest. The lowest number will be white. The darkest color will be green. You can do it red if you want. I personally just like to keep it a little bit cleaner. Add another rule. Highlight this one now. Done. Done. Add another rule. Color scale. It's a bit annoying the way that they make you do this. There's not really a good way to like do it really quickly. Add another rule. I guess I can just change this, right, to like J. Okay. Add another rule. Column L. So I guess this is a fast way of doing it, kind of fast. Add another rule. Now we're going to do N. Add another rule. And then now we're going to do P. Cool. Now we have our heat maps. Looks great. Okay, so now we have our heat maps. Let's go to our steps and check that off. Okay, so now I want to show you guys how to do a dynamic month system. And for this, I mean, when I go to my completed dashboard, like how does it show just like the 12 months that I want it to show, right? So the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go to Dropdowns. I'm going to call this dynamic month. So what I'm looking to accomplish here is I want to be able to select a drop-down menu here, and whatever I select, that's going to be the month that shows at the very bottom as my latest month, and then everything else is going to be just the previous 12 months, right? So how do I do that? How do I make this drop-down show me the current month as the top option, right? Because that's probably what I want to use, or at least the second to latest month. So that is really simple. I am going to go to Dropdowns new. Okay, so I'm going to use the date formula again. So the point here, the key here is I want to show the current month, which is for me July 2022. I want it to show July 1st, 2022, right? Because I want to do it always by the first of the month, because that's what I used to build everything in this video. So just use the date formula again, and then for year, you're going to put in the year formula now. Now instead of putting a date, just put in today, the today formula. So type in today in parentheses, close that out, comma. So let me just put this on separate rows. So I'm going to hit Option Enter. I think on a PC it's Alt Enter. I go over this in my other videos. I think it's really great to separate out your formulas. It just makes it a lot easier. Oops, year to understand, okay? Because there's a lot of parentheses and stuff. So year of, let me separate those even more. So I'm doing the year of today, comma. Now the next thing I put in is the month of today. Okay. Now for the day, I'm just gonna put in 1. Cool. So maybe I didn't need to do it for this one. Yeah, okay, maybe I'll just, whatever. Okay, so it's just the date of today, right? Date, year, month of today, but then the day is always going to be 1, okay? Now, how do I get the previous, now I want to have June, right? So I'm just going to do date. I'm going to do year, which is always going to be the year of, I guess I can do year of today. There's multiple ways of doing this. Year of today. Now for the month, I'm going to do the month of this one minus 1, and then the date's always going to be 1. Okay, so, and then now, wait, the year shouldn't always be today. Okay, so the year should actually be not today, but the year should always be this. I think this might be a mistake because what happens in December? Let me just think about this. Okay, obviously I don't need all the way down to 40, but let me just make sure this formula is correct. because I did it slightly different in my actual dashboard that I showed you guys, but it's a little bit too advanced, I think, to show on this one. So let me just check really quickly. AO month today, -1, -1, -1. Okay, I think this should be fine. Let me just double check though that in between the years it's gonna work fine. Okay, good. Okay, so now you see what I have here is I have a dynamic month range where once the date of today changes into August, it's going to change into August, right? And I'm always going to have all of these as my options. Maybe I don't need this many options, but you know, this is more than enough months, right? This is like 20 months, but you can drag this all the way down. Just keep dragging this formula down. Now, what it's going to do is I'm going to use this as my drop-down option. I'm going to go to my 12-month report here, and now I'm going to have an option under, I'll put this here, okay, put this here, a drop-down menu option, wherever you want to put it, data validation. I'm going to go to my drop-downs, and then I'm going to use this as my drop-down option. Oops. That's my drop-down option here. Hit OK. Hit save. Okay. So now when I go back to my dashboard, you'll see here I have all of these months I can use, right? So I'm going to say the latest month, and then I can select this here. Now it's going to show as like July 1st, but just know it's for the entire month, right? What you can do is go to format, number, and then you can change it so that it shows, but in the options it's always just going to show as that way. Like I said, there are some more advanced ways to kind of figure this out, and so that if this actually shows just the month name, but I won't go over it in this video, maybe in a future video. Now what we want to do is we want to whatever is in this selection here, I want it to show up here, right? So really this is not that hard. I can just literally delete this, put equals, and whatever this is, right? But the key is now I just want to select this one -1. So it's gonna be the same thing, really. It's gonna be, I'm sure there's a better way of doing this, but I'm just gonna use that same date formula where I do the year. I think this should work. Year of down here, month of here, -1, and then 1, right? It's kind of the same formula. And then let's just copy this. There's no way to paste up, so I'm just gonna copy it and paste up. Let's see how it works when the years go by. So the year is of C13. That's crazy how it changes the year, because I did the year of C13. Huh. Okay, so I guess that works from 2022. Okay, so that works. And then what you can do is highlight all of this, go to format, number, and change this to a date, okay? So now what this does is whatever the latest month that I select, I am going to show just the previous 12 months. Obviously there was no data here. So let's change this to a more recent time. Okay, so now I'm choosing January 22 as the latest month. Or I can do, yeah, you probably don't need to have this many month options. It's just going to be a little bit confusing because I had no data here anyways. Here. So what we're going to do is do it this way. I'm going to make a follow-up video where I do this by weeks, and I might just address this to make this a little bit better so that it only shows you the months where you guys actually have data. It's not that hard to do, right? You basically would just do a sort unique of your helper columns. So wherever your helper monthly cost new. But for now, I think this is quite good enough to show you guys how to do this. Okay, so now we finished this part here. Let's go to steps, dynamic month system. Now it's just formatting is our last step, okay? So for formatting, it's just basically borders and like merging certain cells so it looks better, okay? So here, The first thing I always like to do is like to get rid of all these grid lines. I think they're pretty ugly. So I'm gonna get rid of all these grid lines. And then let's shorten this out a bit. Let's resize some of these columns because the numbering column can be quite small. And then maybe let's just also resize all of these columns. Just go to resize columns. It starts at 100. I think probably 85 width is probably good enough. To make it a little bit shorter, we can delete all of these extra columns here because it's never going to go past here. And then I want to delete all of this stuff. Okay, so P1, P1, P2. Let me move this down. Let me move this entire thing down a little bit. So now I want to merge these two cells. So I'm going to merge horizontally so it looks a little bit better. I'm going to center it. Probably bold this, make this gray so the coloring looks a little bit different. Probably add a border if I wanted to as well. Now, I also want to merge these. I want to merge these horizontally, right? The Sparkline and everything and the title name merge horizontally. I'm going to, well, first let me just center all of this text so it looks better once I do it. And then let me resize this column, this row, sorry, to fit to data. And then let me merge these three across. Merge horizontally, merge horizontally, merge horizontally. To keep on merging. Merge horizontally. Okay, so now this looks a little bit better, right? As you can probably see. Oh, and then I should probably merge these two, right? So I'm gonna merge this. Oh, you know what? Let me just copy this entire thing, format it, and then here. Cool. And then this one is going to be a number. Remove some of these crazy decimals. 57. Okay. Cool. So now that looks pretty cool. Let's add in a border. A border here. I'll make it like second thickness here. Okay. And then I also probably want to add in some borders here. Borders just really help to section everything off and make it look a bit cleaner. So I don't want to go crazy with borders. Some people put borders across everything, but it's just nice to think about how people are going to look at it and how to make it so that their eyes can visually follow everything without being overwhelmed by all these lines, right? So I'm going to section each part. Oops. Each part like this here. And then what I would do is I'm probably going to add in a little bit smaller borders. Oh, you can make these sparklines like a bit bigger, by the way, by kind of dragging this down here. So now I'm going to use the smallest bordering one to separate out these sections here. I'm not going to put a border in between the scorecard name and the value because I want it to look like it's coherent in one place, right? But I do want to make these scorecards a little bit bigger. I think it looks better when it's bigger. So 18, size 18 font. Here, 18, or I can make this look a bit smaller so their eyes are drawn to this, the totals first, and then the average. So let's say we're gonna make this 16. Right, something like this. And then I also want to add in some borders down here. Whoops, wrong one. Down here as well, right? And then you can also change where these numbers kind of float in the middle here. Here, I also want to make it float a little bit. So it's a little bit higher, not a big deal. Things like this, that looks pretty good to me. I'm gonna add in one border here. So this is kind of like the OCD stuff at the very end that like I spend a lot of probably too much time on, but it does help, the way the dashboard looks does make it more usable or not, right? Or like more value, like show higher value. Maybe I'll change these two fonts to a little bit smaller, just like the regular size is fine. 12, maybe something like this, and then I want to right align these two things here. And let's make this really small, bold them. Okay, and then here, I think it would be quite cool to kind of do some alternating colors. So also put in some, okay, so put in some periods here. So you can't really put in periods after numbers in Google Docs because it's just going to automatically remove it. But you can change the formatting of it. So you go to Format, go to Custom Number Format, and then just type in the number sign and then a period, right? And then hit Apply. Now it's going to show it this way. And then I also think it would be great to alternate these colors a bit. So go to Format, Alternating Colors, no header, hit equals. So this way the color kind of alternates a bit. And then what's my latest month? It is June. Okay, so now if you look at this dashboard and this dashboard, yeah, we can change the coloring, but it's pretty much the same thing. It is the same thing. So now you guys know how to build like a really cool monthly report like this. And then in my next video, I'm going to show you guys how to do this for weeks and maybe kind of show you guys a bit more dynamic things, how to kind of change, yeah, some more dynamic things. I'll probably like show you guys like a premium course that you guys can pay for, and it'll kind of do a lot more cool things like you guys can just have a dynamic total row, so you guys can show, okay, the latest month is June, but I want to show the last 6 months, last 12 months, like things like that. And then this bottom will change, so you don't have to like add in new rows and things like that. But you guys get the basic idea. Let me know if you guys have any questions on this and what else you guys want to know to learn how to build in Google Sheets. I'm gonna basically create a dashboard series where I go over how to build certain elements of a dashboard, and I'm gonna try to make the videos a bit shorter. So like how to do week over week, month over month change, trends, just like little portions of dashboards that everyone always asks for, and then show you guys how to build them kind of step by step. So I hope this was helpful. I know it was a bit longer than I thought it would be, but let me know what questions you guys have, what you guys think, things like that. Thanks.